Is weird, odd, strange, or just plain bizarre is really your cup of tea? Then, the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast will give you that fix. Can't believe it? Well, listen for yourself as we deliver the strangest news you definitely won't find on CNN or Fox. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC Weird News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Colleen, and let's just get into some weird stuff. So, I've talked about a lot of kind of more morbid things and just really kind of strange things in the past few episodes, so I thought we'd make it a little lighter in this one. So, let's talk about some weird animal facts this time. So these are a bunch of weird animal facts that I found that I didn't know, except for like one or two that I did know and I thought were really interesting and that you guys should know. So let's start off with pigeons. Now you see pigeons everywhere you go. They are everywhere. They're just, I don't know, I think my husband calls them sky rats, but pigeons, like a trained pigeon, can actually tell the difference between the paintings of Pablo Picasso and Claude Monet. So, pigeons are smart. I also read somewhere that they can do math. Kind of like you can teach dogs to do stuff like that, where you put out things and then they count. I don't know. It's really strange. But let's move on. So, this is an animal that I've seen before, and they're the cutest things ever, but actually a lot of people don't know that this animal exists, and I'm probably going to butcher the name, but bear with me. The chevrotain, I think is what it's called, looks like a tiny deer with fangs. These are some of the cutest animals I've ever seen. I'm definitely going to post a picture on the at GSMC_Weird News Twitter, and then the GSMC Weird News Facebook. I'm going to post a picture of him there because you guys need to see this animal. It is the cutest animal I've ever seen in my life. Like 100%. So let's move on to something a little different. How about dragonflies? So dragonflies, when they mate, they've got those really long kind of tails, but when they mate with other dragonflies, they make a heart shape with their tail. I'll definitely post a photo of that too, because this is one of the coolest things I've seen. I didn't know they did this. I don't know a lot about dragonflies, but I do know that, well, they're gorgeous, first off. And you don't want to get one in your hair. I've gotten one in my hair before, and it's terrifying getting any sort of flying creature in your hair, because then they just fly around and you're panicking and they're panicking and it's a whole thing. But I didn't know this about dragonflies, and it's really beautiful, like in photos that were taken. I understand that they are mating, but it is one of the coolest things. Also, crocodiles. Okay, crocodiles are terrifying. They're probably one of the scariest animals out there, at least to me. Like, I love them, don't get me wrong. Like, I love a good scary animal, but they'll kill you. Like, these things are serious. And apparently, at one point, there was a crocodile that could gallop like a horse. And that's like scary times a million. I could not imagine a crocodile that was actually galloping. Like, no thank you. That's a no for me. But when I was also looking into this, apparently crocodiles, like, way back when, galloped. It wasn't just one, it was multiple, but at least there was one on record. But they say that older crocodiles did gallop. Now, if you heard a meow a second ago, in true fashion of an Animal Facts video, I actually have some of my little animals hanging out with me while I'm doing this podcast. So I doubt there will be any more sounds, but I'm letting you know. I'll put a picture up on the at GSMC _ weird news so you can see the adorable babies. But anyway, let's move on to the next one, which is prairie dogs. Now, where I live, there are prairie dogs everywhere. There are literally prairie dogs at like every stop sign. Like every time on the corner of somewhere where it's a little bit more dirt, you can see the holes, and most of the times you can see the prairie dogs. So I didn't know this, and it is the cutest thing. I've never seen this, but apparently, prairie dogs say hello by kissing. That is the cutest thing I've ever heard. I mean, come on. That is so adorable. Why have I never seen this? Like, for real. I've seen so many prairie dogs in my lifetime. I've lived here my entire life, and I've seen so many prairie dogs. Even prairie dogs, like, really up close. And I've never seen them kiss, and I really want to. It's probably because they know each other already. I assume that the prairie dogs we see are prairie dogs that kind of are always together kind of thing. So, unfortunately, I've never seen this, but this is the cutest thing I've ever heard. Now, this one is kind of more creepy, and I'll have to find like a diagram photo to show you guys of this, because this is unnerving, but also the coolest thing. So, moray eels have a second set of jaws that extend from their throats. Now, I saw a diagram, and I'm really going to try and find it and post it for you guys. But they extend from their throats and then help push outwards, like the jaw farther. It's really cool. I didn't know that they had that. I didn't know eels had that at all or anything like that. I've seen eels at aquariums and stuff like that, and I just didn't know. This is a fact that is really cool. Now let's talk about my favorite animal. So my favorite animal is a bat. Or just bats in general. I think they are adorable. There's so many different kinds. They're just so cool. And they get really big. I'm talking really big. But this specifically is about fruit bats. And fruit bats kind of have some of the cutest little dog faces. But anyway, fruit bats actually have an excellent sense of sight and smell, unlike other bats do. So, unlike some bats, like the vampire bat and other bats, they actually have a really, really excellent sense of sight and smell, which I thought was really cool because that's not something you think of when you think bats. You think that they're blind and it's all the echolocation and stuff like that, but this is not. This is not that. They actually are great, have a great sight, so I thought that was really cool fact that I found. Now, I'm surprised I didn't know this before, because I love bats, and I've done, when I was younger, I did all sorts of, projects, like school projects on bats and stuff like that. I've got bats tattooed on my arm because they're so cute, and just everything. And I'm really surprised that I've never heard this fact specifically about bats. Either that, or I'm just not looking in the right places. Like, I'm really not looking in the right places. I think something I'd really love to do is go to one of those, they're like bat, what is it called? Where they take care of all the bats and then they release them. Conservatory? I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to think of the name. It's gonna bother me for a million years until I figure it out. But, I'd really love to go to one of those and see and help out with bats, like, at least for a little bit. I think that would be one of the coolest things you could do. Like I said, bats come in all shapes and sizes, and they are all cute. I know some people are not a fan of their little squished up noses sometimes, and sometimes their faces, but I think every single bat is absolutely adorable. And they get huge. Trust me, they get huge. They can be very, very itty bitty small, but they can also have like a wingspan that's like your arm span. It's ridiculous. And I don't know. I'll have to find a picture too of a really like large bat and put it on the @GSMC_Weird News Twitter and the GSMC Weird News Facebook page so you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about. Now, before I keep just rambling and talking on about bats and making this a bat podcast, let's take a quick break, and when I come back, we'll talk some more weird animal facts.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Weird News Podcast. Now, before the break, we were talking weird animal facts, and we are going to continue on that train of weird animal facts. Now, let's talk about something that I read, and I was just like, wait, this actually happened? So, apparently in 1924, a Labrador Retriever was sentenced to life without parole at Eastern State Penitentiary for killing the governor's cat. Now, whoever this governor was a terrible man. Like, absolutely terrible. Who could do that to a dog? Like, for real. I understand your cat might be the best thing ever, but also this is just dumb. I heard this and I was like, there's no way this really happened. But I did some research and this really happened. It's very sad and very weird. But speaking of cats, I found this fact and I was really kind of surprised. I had no idea, but I guess it kind of makes sense. So apparently cats don't have sweet taste buds, so they can't taste sweet things, which I didn't think about. But if you think about anything that you give a cat as a treat, it's not sweet. Plus, my cats love cheese, thanks to my old roommate, John, who, when they were tiny little babies, used to feed them little pieces of his mac and cheese while he ate because he thought it was cute, and now they're obsessed with cheese. My little muffin kitty, when she was just a little kitten, took an entire slice of pizza off of somebody's plate and ran around the house with it, which was ridiculous because she was so small and this piece of pizza was so big. But anyway, let's move on to birds. So, I don't know, this one's interesting. Birds are actually immune to the heat of like chili peppers, which is mind-boggling to me, but also so cool. I wish I was immune to the heat of chili peppers. I really do. But I also don't wish I was a bird. So maybe it would be good to be a bird. I don't know. But apparently they are immune to the heat of chili peppers, which is awesome. Like I said, I wish I was immune. Because so where I'm from, the big thing is green chili. Green chili is everywhere. You can get green chili at McDonald's or Burger King or, that kind of stuff. You can get green chili everywhere. And I like green chili, don't get me wrong. I'm just not good with spicy foods. I just want foods that are, like, if it's spicy, to be flavorful spicy and not burning my mouth off into liquid magma spicy. Like, I don't know. That's just what, I want a good tasty spice. I don't want I can't breathe, it's so hot spice. Yeah, not about that. But let's move on to puffins. Now, this was just a fact I found that it actually is just like super cute. It's not so much like well, I guess it is a fact. I didn't know this, but baby puffins are called pufflings. How cute. I am going to forever, every time I see a baby puffin, I'm going to be like, that's a puffling. How cute. I don't know. This is going to be the cutest podcast ever because puffling, I mean, so cute. Now, speaking of names for things, let's talk about a group of ferrets. A group of ferrets is called a business. What? That's so cute. I used to have a ferret. Unfortunately, he passed away early 2019. He was very old, so he passed from old age, and that's fine. He was sweet. But if I had a group of them, I would have been like, this is my business. This is my business. Look at my business. I mean, I don't know. I love it when there are names for things like a group of crows is a murder. Like, it's so cute. And it's like, oh, look, it's a murder. You know, I don't know. Maybe I'm just weird like that and I like things like that, but I'm not sure. Now let's move on to another animal that I absolutely love. This is about sharks. Now I love every type of shark. Just, if I had money to just throw into charity foundations, part of that into one charity would be for sharks because they are being finned and it is really bad. All for shark fin soup, and there's a wonderful Netflix documentary about it. I'll have to find the name and put it on the @GSMC_Weird News Twitter and the GSMC Weird News Facebook page because it's really good and it really shows the dark side of finning. But let's move on to this fact. So the annual number of worldwide shark bites is 10 times less than the number of people bitten by other people in New York City. This is insane. That's a what? I mean, I know that the actual number of shark bites on humans, like annually around the world is actually not as large as everybody thinks it is. I know that people are terrified of sharks because they think they're going to get eaten or bitten or something along those lines, but you're actually really not likely to be bitten by a shark. Your chances of actually going out and being bitten by a shark are very low. Actually a lot lower than most people think. So, I don't know. I think that's why people are not fans of sharks, because they think they're gonna die. You know, movies, Jaws, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I love them, and I think really we should take the time to appreciate every animal on this planet. I love aquatic animals a lot because they're so strange and different and not like animals on land. And they're amazing. I really think you should take the time, if you're not a fan of sharks, to do some research into sharks. Watch some, I don't know, documentaries about sharks. Really kind of get to know them. I don't know. I love sharks. I actually have a dream of swimming with whale sharks and also with hammerhead sharks. Hammerhead sharks are my favorite shark, but there are so many different species of shark that are really crazy and cool, and there are also a lot of species of shark, like the whale shark, that aren't going to eat you or bite you. I mean, you can be sucked into a whale shark's mouth because they are huge, but the possibility of that is like minuscule. It's the smallest little possibility that you would die via a whale shark. I don't know, people swim with whale sharks all the time. And they're not your typical shark, they're more like a whale than a shark, I guess, if that makes sense. But also, like I said, there's so many different species of sharks and stuff that we don't appreciate because we don't talk about, and really we don't appreciate sharks as much as we, should, because they are really, they're vital to our environment, just like almost every animal. I'm not a big fan of bugs, but they are vital to our environment. And so I leave them be. Except for ants. Can't stand those. But, you know, they're all, every animal, every living being is vital to our planet. And we should really take the time to respect every single one of them, no matter if you think they're gross or creepy or whatever. That's my PSA. Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, I'm gonna stop preaching to you about sharks and talk about some more weird animal facts.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back to the GSMC Weird News Podcast. Now, before the break, we were talking weird animal facts, and I also did a little shark conversation with you guys. Now, let's move on to some more weird animal facts, and stray away from the sharks. So, let's talk about another aquatic creature, the colossal squid. Now, like I had said earlier on in this podcast, I love aquatic animals and just creatures because they're so strange and so different. Now, I want to talk the colossal squid. Now, obviously by the name colossal squid, they are huge, but you don't really think about how big they can get. But apparently the colossal squid can grow to the size of a bus. That's insane. That's a huge squid. That's like, I don't know, like a whale-sized squid almost? That's insane. Let's move on to our canine companions. I have said earlier in this podcast that I had some animal friends with me while I am recording this today, which I thought would be appropriate for this weird facts of animals podcast. And I've got two little doggos, or not so little doggos, that are sleeping with me today while I do this, and they are doggos, and let's talk doggos. So, dogs actually have fewer taste buds than humans. Now, I kind of knew this, only for the fact that I knew that, they don't really have the same taste in the fact that, like, they eat garbage and gross stuff. And this is also due to the fact that they just go for things that have a strong smell. Now, animals are just going to eat something that has a strong smell. So they're always interested in your food because usually it's got a pretty strong smell because it's been cooked. And also because you're eating it. But they're really kind of in for the strong smells. And I guess that works with the, fewer taste buds thing, as they're not so much tasting everything that they're eating, but they're just going for stuff that smells really strong that they think is going to be, good. So that's why they eat trash and, nasty things. Now, we talked about crocodiles earlier in this podcast, but let's talk about alligators. Alligators don't actually hit their full size, so they continue growing until they're around 33. Now most of them apparently hit their full size around 33. That's been recorded, but they do just keep growing and don't stop for a very long time. They're not like humans where we kind of stop growing around our teenage years. No, they stop growing around the 30s, which is insane. 30 years of just constant growing. I don't know. I've seen alligators before. They're huge and insane. I remember, a few years back, I was with my sister in South Carolina. I got a lot of family from South Carolina. and we were coming back from somewhere at night with my cousins, and while we were driving, we look out and across the road is this huge alligator just sitting there with his mouth open. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. And I've seen a bunch of alligators, but that was probably the biggest alligator I've ever seen. I doubt he was like 33, but man, he was huge. Now, we also talked about how a group of ferrets is called a business, which is so fantastic. Now, I've got a few more groups of animals and what they're called. So, a group of rhinos is called a crash. So, if you're at the zoo or something and you see a group of rhinos, you could be like, man, that's a serious crash. I know, okay, sorry, that was a really bad joke. But let's move along. So, a group of owls is called a parliament. I think that's so, like, I don't know, fitting, because they're so royal, the way that they hold themselves. You see a group of owls, you're like, man, that's a serious parliament. If you had a group of owls and a group of ferrets, you'd be like, look at that business. Ooh, but there's parliament. Okay, I gotta stop with these jokes. I apologize for those. Now, we talked cows, and I want to bring it back to cows. So, cows apparently have best friends. I think this is adorable. So, cows apparently have best friends. So, I mean, I guess that makes sense. They're always hanging out with each other, and, you know, sometimes you see, like, two cows that are kind of hanging out with each other. It's either, like, mama and the baby, or I guess it's best friends. That's really cool. I don't know. Best friends are cool. Now let's talk giraffes. Now, there's something that goes around all the time about giraffes on the internet. They're like, what sound does a giraffe make? Now, some people speculate that giraffes make this like screaming sound or a deep guttural sound or something like that. Well, nobody's ever captured the sound of a giraffe, and this is why. It's because giraffes don't have vocal cords. Giraffes don't have vocal cords. That's just it. So they don't make sound. They don't make a sound. So that's why giraffes have never been caught on camera or audio or anything like that making a sound, because they don't. They just don't make a sound. That's the thing. Also with giraffes with darker spots are actually more dominant than the giraffes with the lighter spots. So the more dominant giraffe is always the one with the lighter spots. That's just, or the darker spots, excuse me. That's just how it goes. I thought this was really interesting because I never thought about, you know, the more dominant giraffe. That's not really the giraffe you're thinking about. You're just thinking about a giraffe. But I never thought about the most dominant giraffe having those darker spots, and that's what I thought was pretty cool. Also, they don't make a sound. Giraffes don't make a sound. I don't know. It's something about that always cracked me up. And I remember having this conversation with a friend of mine, and we were like talking about what sound does a giraffe make, and we were going through the internet and just researching, trying to figure out what sound a giraffe makes, and nobody knew, and we couldn't find anything about it. And then while I was doing research for this, I found, oh wait, never mind, giraffes just don't make sound. They just don't. So I thought that was really cool. I don't know. It's weird. Let's move along from giraffes real quick and talk about horned lizards. Now, horned lizards are everywhere. We used to get a lot of horny toads. They're definitely endangered now, and so you see a horny toad, don't pick it up, don't bring it home. They're super endangered. I used to find them all the time when I was a kid, but let's talk just horned lizards. Now, horned lizards apparently squirt blood from their eyes. This is so cool. I mean, come on. I think it's a defense mechanism is what it is, and they squirt blood from their eyes as a defense from predators or what have you. I think that's really cool. I don't know. I'm weird, and I really like the weirder aspect of things, and I saw this and I was like, ooh, I gotta put this in the podcast because it's so weird. It's just so weird. They just like squirt blood out of their eyes like nasty little creatures. animals. I don't know. I loved horned lizards. I love lizards. I just love animals. Like, honestly, animals are the greatest thing in the world. I think that's what it really comes down to, is I just love animals. Can't help it. They're all great. Even bugs. I hate bugs. I'm not a big fan of a lot of bugs, but they are really cool creatures. I don't know. We should all just love the animals. That's what we should do. We should all just love the animals. Now, let's take a quick break, and when I come back, we'll talk some more weird animal facts.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and one championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Weird News Podcast. Now, before the break, we were talking about weird animal facts. Now let's continue on that train and head on over to some hyena facts. So, apparently it's hard to differentiate male and female hyenas. And the reason for this is because female hyenas, I feel like I said that weird, but female hyenas actually have genitalia that's very, very similar to the genitalia of the male hyena. I thought this was really interesting because, once again, this isn't something you think about, and they're so close to kind of like dogs in a way that you'd think that they're more, the same. They're almost the same, but they're obviously not. Now let's talk about, good Lord, where am I today? Let's talk about some ancient ancestors. So, ancient ancestors of whales used to walk on land. That's insane. So, they used to walk on land and actually had hooves and webbed hind legs. That's insane. And they were the size of like a wolf or a fox, like kind of around that size. So they were very small. They had hooves and webbed hind legs. And now they're huge and purely aquatic. I mean, they do breathe air, but mainly aquatic. Like, that's insane. They can't walk on land now, and if they did, that would be terrifying because they are huge. Not a small animal, let me tell you. So, let's keep it on with the aquatic animals here, and let's go deep, deep, deep down into our oceans and talk about the humpback anglerfish. Now, I knew about anglerfish, but I guess I didn't know anything about humpback anglerfish. But apparently they reproduce by having the male bite onto the female, and that fertilizes their eggs. That's kind of cool. It's just I guess it's just a love bite. A love bite to help out your babies. Okay. Let's move on to koalas. Now, koalas have fingerprints that are extremely similar to humans. I mean, to the point where it's almost impossible to tell the difference, which this actually is an issue because there have been crime scenes where there have been koala fingerprints and human fingerprints, and it basically is so hard to differentiate that this causes a good problem. I didn't know this was a thing at all, and it's like the last animal that you would think would be similar in fingerprints to humans, but I guess they are, and they need to stay away from crime scenes because they're messing some stuff up. Now, speaking of crimes, let's talk about the assassin bug. They also look like giant ants, and I've heard them be called the assassin ants, but they're found in East Africa and Malaysia, and they carry the bodies of dead ants on their body to camouflage themselves. Okay. Ugh, that's disgusting. I'm not a fan. Okay, first off, I'm not a fan of ants. I don't know if I've talked about this before on the podcast, but when I was younger, I had a dream that I was covered in ants, and I was screaming, and I ran down the stairs, and I was just brushing them off and screaming. I woke up downstairs covered in ants. No joke. So I guess it wasn't a dream, and it was, oh my gosh. Yeah, no, I can't do ants. I hate them. I hate them so much. Ooh, even just the thought of them makes me want to kind of vomit in my mouth. But, that's this assassin bug, or ant, kills the ants and wears them on his body. I guess I did the same thing, but they weren't dead. Okay, let's move away from ants and talk about the eagle. The U.S.'s most prized animal. So the eagle, the strike of an eagle, can be 2 times stronger than a rifle shot. This is insane. That is a huge amount of force. That is a huge amount of force that an eagle can produce in a strike. This is not, this is a lot of things when it comes to animals. Animals are cute, but animals are dangerous, and eagles are majestic and amazing, but they are very, very dangerous, and this is why. This is exactly why, because their strike can be 2 times stronger than a rifle shot. How crazy is that? Let's talk about our feline friends now. Maybe one that you heard in the beginning of this podcast. But let's talk about cats. So I think I've talked about this before when I was talking about the fact that cats meow. They say that cats only meow at humans. Like, they meow at humans to kind of mimic the sound of humans. But I talked about that they can make so many sounds. Now, I saw this fact, and then I did a little bit more digging, because the fact is that cats can actually bark. Now, I was kind of doing some digging because I said that they made a lot of sounds, but I didn't know how many sounds a cat actually can make. And so while I was digging, I found the number. Well, it's not an exact number, because apparently cats can make more than 100 sounds. More than 100 sounds. That's insane. And I kind of notice it having cats. I have 3 little babies. One that you might have heard earlier. Since she came up to the microphone and just went, meow. Yeah, she's nuts. But, cats can make more than 100 sounds. And I can see that because I've heard my cats make so many different sounds. They meow, they growl. I don't think I've ever heard a bark, but they hiss, and I've heard them chirp a lot. They kind of make this chirping noise, and also 2 of my cats have really, really loud meows, and one of them is probably the cutest cat ever, but she has the grossest sounding meow. It is not like most other cats that you hear. It's like meow, kind of like that. Yeah, that's a weird sound, and she makes that sound. And I can understand how they can make so many sounds, because I've heard so many sounds come out of cats. I've heard so many different sounds come out of cats, and I doubt I've heard 100 different sounds, but I guess they can make more than 100 different sounds, which is insane. I guess it's just their vocal cords. When I was looking it up, it seemed like it was their vocal cords that could make so many different sounds. And they're different than other animals and human vocal cords. So I thought that was pretty interesting because, geez, like that's not something you wouldn't think that they make over 100 sounds. You're like, maybe they make like 20 sounds. No, they make over 100 sounds. For some reason, I thought the number was like 35, but boy, was I wrong. Now let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk some more weird animal facts.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the GSMC Weird News Podcast. Now, before the break, we were talking about weird animal... excuse me, I apparently was about to die. Weird animal facts. Now, we talked about cats right at the end. Now, let's bring it back around to kind of cats. So, apparently cats and horses are highly susceptible to black widow venom, whereas dogs are relatively resistant, and sheep and rabbits are completely immune. That's crazy. I remember somebody had told me that dogs were actually highly susceptible to venom, to black widow venom, but apparently that is false, and cats are more susceptible to black widow venom than dogs are, and dogs are relatively resistant. Obviously not 100% resistant, so always be careful with black widows around your house animals, because you don't know what they can, withstand. But apparently if you have rabbits or sheep, they are immune. And that's crazy. I actually didn't think about any animal that would be purely immune to their venom, but I guess rabbits and cats are. Or, excuse me, rabbits and sheep are. And cats are not, and neither are horses. Interesting. Now let's talk about squirrels. This is just a little fact, and I found it kind of hilarious and just a little strange. So apparently squirrels can't burp or vomit. I guess that makes sense because they just shove things in their mouth and then they just can't vomit. I don't know. I just thought that was kind of weird. Let's move to owls. Now, I found a lot of weird facts about owls, but I found this one to be the strangest. Now, apparently owls don't have eyeballs. They have eye tubes that kind of like elongated, and they're held in place by, excuse me, I'm going to butcher this word, but sclerotic rings, or just bony structures in the skull. So we'll just say bony structures in the skull. And because of this, owls can't really move or roll their eyeballs, which kind of makes sense why their neck has so much mobility. So their neck has so much mobility to be able to move their eyeballs without, moving their eyeballs, because they don't have eyeballs, they have eye tubes. How weird is that? I mean, come on. Weird. Okay, I need to stop saying weird. But like tube eyeballs, which is really interesting, mind you, but also very strange. Now, let's move on to something that is old. let's talk about extinct colossus penguins. Now, apparently extinct colossus penguins stood as tall as LeBron James. So I was like, okay, they stood as tall as LeBron James. Well, how tall is LeBron James? He is 6'9". So these penguins stood 6'9". How crazy. Could you imagine seeing a penguin that huge? I've seen penguins in, zoos. That's the word I'm looking for, zoos. I've seen them in zoos, and actually we recently got a penguin exhibit that they've been working on for a few years at my local zoo, which is really cool. I haven't gone to see them yet, but I've seen them in other zoos, like larger zoos. But they're not that tall. They're not that big. I mean, they're bigger than you kind of think they are, but they're not that large. And could you imagine if colossus penguins were not extinct? They would be huge. I am 5 foot tall. I'm a very short lady. And me standing next to a 6'9" penguin would be ridiculous. Now let's move along to another group naming. Now I feel like I could make an entire podcast about the group names of animals, and I'm gonna make a bad joke. I'm letting you know now. I'm gonna make another bad joke about this. So let's talk about a group of parrots. Now a group of parrots is known as a pandemonium. Could you imagine? You walk into a group of parrots, and you're like, "Ooh, this is a pandemonium." Okay, that was my bad joke. I'm so sorry. We're moving on. I can't help but make a bad joke about groups of animals because it's so funny. At least to me, it's so funny. To you guys, you're probably like, "Oh man, she needs to stop. This is so bad." But I think it's hilarious, and I really hope there are people out there who think this is hilarious. Let's talk about reindeer. Now, I love reindeer. I think they are adorable creatures, and pretty much all the ornaments for my Christmas tree. I realized that this year, while I was putting up my Christmas decorations, I guess it was just last Christmas. We'll just say last Christmas. But I realized when I was putting up my Christmas decorations on my tree that every single one of my ornaments were reindeer. Except for like maybe 2. But anyway, let's get into this reindeer fact. So reindeer's eyeballs turn blue in the winter. And this is to help them see in lower light. Now, I think this is so cool. I've seen a lot of photographs of reindeer in the winter, and they have some really beautiful blue eyes. I'll put a picture on the @GSMC_Weird News Twitter and the GSMC Weird News Facebook page so you guys can see what I'm talking about. But I honestly just thought that their eyeballs all year round were blue, because the majority of the photos you see of reindeer are in the winter time. And I just thought that's what they were. But I guess they're not always blue, but they're blue in winter to help them see in lower light. So this is really cool. This is a fact that I found, extremely interesting. Now let's move on to an animal that I've actually seen pretty often, which are buffalo. Now, I have not seen African buffalo often. I've seen buffalo often because there's an area by where I reside that has a bunch of buffalo that roam in this giant area, and it's really fun to see. But let's talk about African buffalo. Now, apparently African buffalo herds display voting behavior in which the individuals register their travel preferences by standing up, looking in one direction, I guess the direction they would like to go, and then laying down. I thought this was really cool, but also, apparently only the female African buffaloes can vote. Let me rephrase that. Only the adult female African buffalo can vote. We should have taken, the advice of the African buffalo herds a long time ago. But anyway, other than that, I thought this was so cool. I really didn't know. I guess I don't know much about buffalo. I see them often, but I don't know much about them. So this fact was really kind of mind-blowing to me because I had no idea that they displayed voting behavior at all. This is one of the coolest things. I guess you don't think that any animal really kind of displays any sort of voting behavior. I don't know. This is one of the coolest facts that I found. It's very weird and definitely not something I knew. Now, I really want a lot of these facts for you to take from this podcast, these facts, and take them to your friends, or if you're trying to start a conversation. These are really good conversation starters all around. All of these are really good conversation starters. Now let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk some more weird animal facts.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Hello and welcome back to the GSMC Weird News Podcast. Now before the break we were talking some weird animal facts, and now I want to talk a few more weird animal facts, but I also want to talk about a few weird human facts. I thought that would be fun to throw in here. Now I'm going to talk 2 more ant-related facts. I hate ants, we just talked about this. But let's move on and get through these. So a super colony of invasive Argentine ants, known as the California Large, covers about 560 miles of the U.S.'s west coast. It is currently engaged in a turf war with a nearby super colony in Mexico. I thought this was really strange. 2 super colonies that are in a turf war with each other. Yeah, not about ants. Ooh, they creep me out. Let's talk another one. So actually, this is not so much an ant fact as it is a wasp fact. So the recently discovered bone house, appropriately named bone house wasp, stuffs the walls of its nest with the bodies of dead ants. So yeah, kind of like the assassin bug that we talked about earlier. Now, I guess they're very, very appropriately named bone house wasp. But let's move on. Let's move away from ants for a little bit and move back to my favorite animal, the bat. So, apparently by eating pests and insects, bats save the U.S. Agriculture industry. Wow. Was that a tongue twister? Was that just me? I think it was just me. But, bats save the U.S. agriculture industry an estimated $3 billion per year because they're eating the pests and insects, which is another great reason to absolutely love bats. Now, let's talk about frogs. So, 14 new species of dancing frogs were discovered in 2014, which is actually relatively recently, raising the global number of known dancing frog species to 24. Now, when I heard this fact, all I could think about was that dancing cartoon frog. His name is actually Michigan J. Frog, and he would sing in like vaudeville style, like, hello, my baby, hello, my darling, hello, my ragtime gal, like that. That's all I can think of when I think about these dancing frogs. This kind of cracks me up. Now let's talk about sea lions. I do love a good sea lion, but sea lion is actually the first non-human mammal with a proven ability to keep a beat. That's so cool. So they're kind of like these dancing frogs, I guess. They're the first non-human mammal with a proven ability to keep a beat. I think that's pretty cool. I think Michigan J. Frog would appreciate that. Now, let's move on from our animal facts to some human facts. So let's talk about the human body. Now, the human body contains enough fat to make 7 bars of soap. That's a lot of soap. That's a lot of soap that we can make with our fat. Also, between birth and death, the human body goes from having 300 bones to just 206 bones. I guess you just don't think about losing bones or degenerating bones, but that's a thing. Also, astronauts can grow up to 2 inches taller in space. That's really cool. I guess when you're in space, you can grow 2 inches taller. Maybe. If I went to space, I wouldn't be 5 foot. I'd be 5'2". Maybe. Now, while listening to music, your heartbeat actually syncs up with the rhythm. That's so crazy to me. I mean, I guess if I'm listening to some serious death metal, my heart's all do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. I guess. I don't know, though. But that's crazy. That's a crazy fact, and it's kind of something to think about. Like, if you're listening to music, maybe, like, put your hand on your heart and see where your heart beats at. That's kind of cool. Okay, let's talk about kidneys. So, your left kidney is actually higher up in your body than your right kidney. I never thought about that. I really thought that they were, like, symmetrical in a way. Now, in extreme cases of starvation, the brain will actually begin to eat itself. So, make sure you're eating well. Make sure you're eating some good food. Like, for real. Eat. Don't starve yourself. Eat. Now let's move on again. There are more than 100,000 miles of blood vessels in your body. I saw this cool picture of it, and I'll see if I can find it and put it on that at GSMC_Weird News Twitter and the GSMC Weird News Facebook page. Now, I'm going to kind of go quickly through a few of these just to get them all out there. So, your ears and nose never stop growing. I don't believe this. I don't believe this at all. It's probably true, but I don't want to believe this because I don't want my nose to get any bigger than it already is. Or my ears, for that matter. Humans shed about 600,000 particles of skin every hour. Now, I was kind of curious about this because I was wondering if maybe, if you had drier skin, if you actually shed more particles of skin every hour. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But also, you carry an average of 4 pounds of bacteria in your body, like constantly, which is fine. Not all bacteria is bad bacteria. We gotta remember that. It's not all bad. Also, humans can't digest grass. So I know that there are health nuts and fanatics who claim that wheatgrass actually aids in digestion, but it doesn't. You would actually need several stomachs to digest grass, just like cows have, I believe, 3 stomachs, and that's how they can digest grass. I think I got one more human weird fact for you. So the scientific name for a stomach growl. So there is a scientific name for the little growl sounds your stomach makes when you're hungry. Or just when you're not. I don't know, whenever your stomach growls. This is the scientific name for it. And I'm going to butcher this and probably say it a few times, but I will spell it for you. Borborygmus? I don't know. It's a funny word in general, but it is spelled Borborygmus. If any of you guys can pronounce it, like, let me know on the at GSMC_Weird News Twitter or the GSMC Weird News Facebook page, because I'm always on those and I really want to know how you pronounce this word, because it's such a silly word in general, but also stomach growls are kind of silly anyway. Usually when my stomach growls, I'm like, oh, we gotta feed the beast. Because, yeah, I don't know. I love to eat too. Don't starve yourself, because your brain will eat itself. Just want to put that in there. And seriously, guys, I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening to me every, twice a week. Every twice a week. Just tell you nonsense and weird facts. And I seriously want to thank you guys for dealing with my really bad jokes today. And all these weird facts are really fun to bring to a party, or if you're trying to get to know someone, this is a fun way to kind of, just start a conversation. These are great conversation starters and great things to just talk about with people you know, and great facts to throw around. And once again, guys, I really would like you guys to communicate with me. I'm always on the at GSMC_Weird News Twitter and the GSMC Weird News Facebook page, so communicate with me. Reach out to me. Let me know some weird animal or human facts that you know that I didn't talk about in this. Or if you learned anything from this, let me know. Like, for real. Hit me up. Also, once again, seriously, guys, I want to thank you so much for listening to the GSMC Weird News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Colleen, and I will talk to you in the next one.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.